Welcome to Might in Motion, where we help you navigate your personal and professional goals to manifest them into your deserved career and life path. Here at Might in Motion, we don't make excuses, we do the work and go above and beyond. The Might in Motion podcast brings you guests that will help stretch you out of your comfort zone and push you to improve your goals. Like, comment, and share. This is Might in Motion.
So tonight, I'm bringing to you Jolene Beaton. She's a singles recruiter, a coach, and an author. She's the founder of Jolene's List, which is a recruiting company that focuses on connecting healthy singles with matchmakers across the country. She's been a matchmaker and coach for 15 years, holds a master's degree in psychology, and is trained in premarital and domestic violence counseling. She recently published a book, Dating Explained, It's Not Them, It's You. And her main focus is improving the modern dating culture. And so she offers a 21-day challenge to change your relationship with dating and love. She lives in San Diego with her teenage daughter. I am so happy to be joined by Jolene. Welcome to Might in Motion.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
This is really, really fun because we got to meet in person last year and it was such a joy, even though it was like this brief interaction. I have been looking forward to this conversation ever since we got it scheduled. So thank you for spending time with us this evening.
Of course.
So when we were in the green room, before we went live, we were talking about a whole bunch of different things. And one thing that we didn't actually get into that I am so curious about is, how did you get into being this master matchmaker?
I love this story because I feel like a lot of people think it's this glamorous job, right, to be a matchmaker. And we've seen it on TV. Mm-hmm. And I think it was first brought to us from the millionaire matchmaker, Patty. And so it's this world where it's really like this secret life. Like, what is it all about? And it feels very romantic. My story is much less glamorous than that. I was in mortgage. I was doing mortgage loans. I had always had a career in sales. And in 2008, I found myself with a whole bunch of money owed to me and no business on the horizon. So I was like, I need to get a job. Mm-hmm. And I was in my early 20s at this time. And so I started working at a tanning salon. And I was like, I just need something, right? You know, I'm just someone who needs to work all the time. So I get this great job. And so I'm looking for my next big career. And my girlfriend passes on a job at a company called It's Just Lunch. And she calls me. She says, I think you'd be fantastic for it. I go and interview. I get the job. And boom, I'm a matchmaker. Only I'm a matchmaker who has never been on a date. I had boyfriends in high school. And then I ended up, dating the father of my daughter. And that was it. I'd never actually been on a first date.
Wow. That is impressive. That's talk about like not being able to necessarily relate with It's Just Lunch versus actually going on a dinner date.
Well, it's hilarious. You're talking to clients. And again, I was very young. And so I'm talking to clients that are in their 40s and 50s and 60s. And we're talking about dating and I'm matching them up. And so it took me a little bit, to get my wings. And I remember thinking early on, there was these people that it would just work for, right? Like they would just end up in a relationship. Mm-hmm. And I started, like writing down, what are the qualities that these people have? Because there was another subset of people that were really upset. They hated dating. They hated us, and so I wanted to understand the difference. And so I started, with a notepad and just writing down, the characteristics that the people that had found success and value in dating, what were they like?
Yeah.
Right? And much like your uh, motto, no excuses, do the work and go above and beyond. Shocker, right? That is what these people were like. They were winners. They just were open. They were loving. They were kind. They were easy to laugh things off. They, I was very impressed with them. I also took a really deep interest in the people that did not find value and really hated dating. And so I'd sit for a couple years of my career. I sat and just listened to unhappy people. And I realized quickly that one of the things in dating that was missing was accountability on the person, the single. There was a lot of blame, the environment was to be blamed, that dating itself sucked, and people weren't relationship ready, and everybody needs to heal from some certain trauma from their childhood. And so there was a lot of that junk coming in, but not a lot of people going, what can I do? What can I do to show up in a way that I can connect easily with others? And so I didn't know it at the time, but that work would lead to me coaching our clients and, now working with over 20,000 singles across the country, and eventually would lead to the book, Dating Explained. It's not them, it's you.
Yeah, that's amazing, because I think that accountability, it's not just for singles, right? Even for, myself, I had to take accountability for actions I was taking in my relationship with my husband or my kids, or even your relationships at work. So like, I'm married, so I'm not dating, right? But I think of it as kind of a work situation, in that I'm creating relationships with people on my team and so you have to know too, those same people that complain about everybody at the office, and the same people that are probably not going to have that success on a relationship basis either, because you do have to look within. You have to think about, what are you bringing to the table? So I just even love the title. I love it. Like, Dating Explained, it's not them, it's you. It puts the onus right where it needs to be, which is look in that mirror and look at yourself first. That's all you can fix anyway. You can't fix 20,000 other singles. You can only fix you.
Well, and I really tried to do it from the standpoint of the perspective of there's about 25 avatars I use in the book that are, I call them SAFAR, single for a reason, right? Single reasons that you may be chronically single or just single, right? If you are someone who says, why hasn't it happened yet, right? If you don't know, then what this book does is it leads you into about 25 different scenarios of what your persona looks like on a date. So it gives you feedback from the other person's perspective. And this could be from someone, let's say that you were married 40 years and you lost your spouse and you don't know how you're perceived in the dating world, right? So it'll talk about, if your grief is overpowering, your ability to connect, right?
Yeah.
So it's not as scary as it sounds. It's not them, it's you. It is not a book, an attack on people. It really is like, you might find yourself in about 4 or 5 reasons. Lord knows I did. Once I divorced and then started dating, I did have to, eventually was the matchmaker that dated. And I had to put all of my advice into practice and play. And I did. I took my own advice, everything I knew about dating, I applied to the dating world, and that strategy did not fail me.
I love it. And, you mentioned, there's divorced people who are divorced, people that might have lost a spouse, they're getting back in the game, and that's at a variety of ages, right? It's not just I'm in my 20s or my 30s. This could be people in their 50s, 60s, maybe even 70s they're looking for that companionship and that love. How do you approach from an age perspective, where, if I'm entering now, I might be like, well, last time I dated anybody, I was in my 30s. So I want to date a 30-year-old. Well, you're not 30, and you're narrowing your pool. So how do you approach that feedback from clients?
So, initially what we like to do, and you can do that, like people can just do their own assessment, right? It's really, I feel like there's three pillars of that singles can work on, and without trying to game the system, right? Like, so a lot of the Googleable advice out there is all very similar. When people ask me things like who pays, or I think that's all great, but you can Google it, right? The coaching that I do and the high level conversations I have are they're more universal to not only singles, but people building any relationship in their life, trying to be a leader in the company, building their own business. I mean, working on their own health and fitness, all of these strategies we all learn translate amazing into dating, right? And cliche, but the only thing that works is being yourself. So, if you are aligned, your desires and actions are aligned, it does usually work. But these three pillars are integrity, clarity, and romance. And, integrity is an interesting one, right? Because I feel like most people might say that they do have integrity, but you really have to, you see that in the dating world play out in a very obvious way, because integrity is doing what you say you're going to do. So one of the things in dating is if you ask me out and I say yes, but I don't mean yes because I'm not interested, right? Then I am out of integrity, right? So now to be in integrity, I'm either going to have to have the hard conversation and say, I'm happy to stay connected or get to know each other, but I don't feel the connection necessary to move forward into any type of dating situation, and that's really hard for people. So that's going to be checking yourself. Not do I do what I say with work or with my children, but do I do it when someone asks me on a date, and when someone says, hey, I feel like there's a disconnect. Are you dating someone else? Or what's going on? Being able to say, what? I'd like to continue dating you, but I am not ready to commit. And so are you open to me continuing to explore relationships until I kind of decide? That one's really hard. And people don't do it. Instead, they just have affairs or do whatever, and they just don't take people's, feelings into consideration, really. They think they are. I don't want to hurt someone's feelings, but clarity is going to be knowing, very clear on what you want, knowing what you want. What does that look like? Not what you think it looks like, but what does a happy, healthy, high functioning relationship look like to me? And then speaking that, on all of the dates, and maybe you're repeating it on date 3 and 4 and 5, but always saying, I believe in epic romance. That's all I'm signed up for. If if that sounds juicy to you and you want to create something like that, let's date. If you don't, I get it. You're not my guy, but, or girl, right? Because the reality is these things I've realized in the dating world are not gender specific. They're extremely universal. Men and women both really want to feel the same. We want to feel desired. We want to feel adored. We're all willing to put in effort. So, and then finally, romance. What I feel like the world is lacking is romance, or the dating world at least. There's not a lot of surprises. There's not a lot of flowers or, deep conversations. There's just a lot of very reserved people, and so the romance, I would say, if you could do one thing, plan a romantic date for someone, surprise them. It's not leading them on, and telling them that you love them, sleeping with them when you have no interest in building a relationship with. That's leading someone on.
Yes.
Planning a romantic experience for someone is a way to bolster confidence. It's a way to feel more connected in the world. And think of romance not as writing them a poem or something deeply intimate, but you can think of it as a remoteness from everyday life.
Right.
So just something that gets us in a more creative state, in a more connected state, out of our masculine energy and working and doing and being, right?
You mentioned masculine energy, and we've talked about the masculine and the feminine a few times on Might in Motion. So what does that mean to you, and how does that like impact to being in a successful relationship that would lead to, you know, long-term commitment, if that's what you're looking for? So how do you look at masculine and feminine?
So I'm definitely not an expert in masculine and feminine energy. Actually, someone who read my book, said, I wish you would have touched on masculine and feminine energy. And I said, well, I couldn't because I know nothing about it. So I started, right? Because I do work with a lot of powerhouse women. And there's definitely this, this stereotype that like, men are intimidated. And at least at our company, we don't see that because the men are used to dating strong women. So if they're, let's say dating again, their wives were probably attorneys or doctors or executives. So they're kind of used to that energy. They're a little attracted to it, because it's the doing energy. So the feminine energy, I actually think in the dating world, and this is so funny, but I hear that both men and women want the date to be in that feminine energy level, that state of allowance.
Yeah.
So, I'll have a lot of men and women that are in stages in their life where they're building businesses, raising kids. They might be dealing with a toxic ex. They're trying to look and feel good, and they're doing everything everyone says, and they're stressed out. And the men are no less stressed than the women. So, everybody wants to go on a date and just let the chemistry exist as it is.
Right.
So I would tell my women to be a little bit more sensitive to that than demanding or expecting. There's this thing that goes around in the dating world that says, I won't settle, or I deserve. I don't like that language. I prefer, I'm going to stay open for something that feels really right.
I love that.
It just feels more allowing, feels more feminine. So I think the feminine and masculine energy dynamic in the dating world does maybe come into play a little bit in early dating stages. I would say I see it in the 60s, 70s, when a lot of men and women have the capacity to build romantic relationships. And so they kind of slip nicely into those roles where you'll see a lot of men, they'll call me and they'll say, I stopped by the restaurant and I talked to the server and I got a great table. I preset the table and they made sure parking wasn't going to be a problem. And they, brought flowers in and they asked great questions, and they weren't aggressive in nature, right? They were calm and they were asking to move forward to the next conversation, right? And they were really getting to know these women. And so, and then the women were loving it.
Oh, yeah.
They were just like, oh my God, is this real?
Right.
Right. So I do see those roles play out in that age range. I do think it's difficult when when people are lacking capacity for building romantic relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. Are there, you mentioned you're seeing it in kind of almost like an older generation. It's almost like that skill set of being romantic and doing those things sometimes is lost, I think, in younger generations. And that's a shame because it's a great opportunity. Like, go watch an old movie and see how they did it then. Open the car door, open the door to the restaurant, and just simple things like that go, I think, a really long way.
I think it's capacity. Everybody's fitting, one of my friends who actually wrote the foreword on my book, he said, we're looking for love in our spare time.
Oh, yeah.
And that just hits, right? Everybody's fitting it in. And, I just think about that, right? And so, when you go meet someone, it really is important to be present. Just don't date if you can't date. Just
Yeah.
don't. And it's an addiction for a lot of people. The constant need for attention, right? Dating, a lot of people treat it as a sport, and so I do think, though, if you work on those three pillars, right?
Yep.
The integrity, the clarity of what you want, where you're at, and then being romantic. I have a lot of men that'll say, I'm not romantic. I'm not a romantic. I'm a numbers guy.
Mhm.
Right. I'm like, oh my God, we'll learn to be a romantic. Right. But I realize a lot of women are not very romantic either. They
Yeah.
are so driven that they don't know how to be romantic either, or they're waiting for someone to romance them. And so, men, I always tell them, like, be romantic, be romantic, be romantic. And women, and I'm like, be romantic, be romantic.
And don't dismiss it. Don't dismiss when somebody's providing that romance.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So a lot of, I interviewed recently, like over 800 people. It was like something like 861. And then I did the numbers because I asked them their previous history in relationships. Have you never been in one? Have you been in healthy ones? Have you been in unhealthy? Have you been in toxic or abusive? 97% reported being in at least one unhealthy or toxic and abusive relationship. And that doesn't sit well with me. My number one driving force for my business is, research on a high level, trying to debunk some of these stereotypes and myths about individuals, but also reducing ageism, definitely fighting off domestic violence. And, but it broke my heart. But what I realized is there has been such a theme of people saying, have they been to therapy? And that has been a lot of the decision making on whether someone is deemed healthy or not and will move forward in a relationship. Have they been to therapy? But that, I feel like, in the dating world is beyond us now. Almost everybody that I work with has been to some sort of therapy.
Right.
So now, right, they're coming and it's like, okay, what's missing? And what I realized is they don't have a model of after they have been therapized,
psychoanalyzed and
rehabilitated, right? After this, what I realized is they don't have a model of what to build. And so they continue to go back to their old patterns, right? They might date someone, they might be like, this is amazing. And then next thing you know, 6 months in, they're picking fights because they're like, I need to bring this dynamic back into my life somehow so that I can control it. Right. So the way to not get stuck in those old patterns and to trust your intuition is to have a strategy of dating that is really romantic. And so what that might look like is, for the first, let's say, 12 dates, you're not going to play house. You're not going to say, come over, let me cook you dinner.
Right.
So you're going to continue the dates to be, I always say, I'd rather you guys have 5 2-hour dates than 2 5-hour dates, right? You're going to spread them out. You're going to be a little strategic. You're not going to go and get drunk on your dates. You're going to go to lunch dates, and you're going to go hiking, and you're going to go experience something new, and you might try fishing. And, I don't know, you're just going to create experiences that allow people to get really comfortable, right? And then in those times, then you're going to ask some really deep questions, and you're not going to do it all at once. You're going to do it over the course. And what you end up with is a real plan of, like, is this going to work? And you feel really good about moving forward.
Right. I would challenge people, if you're married, like myself, I challenge you to continue dating your spouse.
Yeah.
Like, that has been a game changer in my household right now, is just that every other week we have a babysitter. It is literally booked from now until she tells us she can't be our babysitter anymore because she's got a full-time real job. I don't know. But, like, on the calendar. And then, like, this year, one of my goals was we're going to go on a vacation, just my husband and I.
Yeah.
Because it's just, you need that. You need to create, and it's a challenge of like, okay, well, what are we going to do this week? Right. And the most fun date nights that we've had, for example, was going to the arcade and literally playing video games was the most fun date that we've had so far. Because you're doing something, like you said, you're creating a memory, you're creating like this experience together. You're not stressing about what are we going to eat? And we're going to sit here and stare at each other for an hour and a half. And what are we going to talk about? Because you're physically doing something together. I love the idea of romance, Jolene.
I know. I think it's so important, and a lot of people follow that 2-2-2.
Yeah.
It's so great, right? Every 2 weeks you go on a date, every 2 months you take a weekend away, and every 2 years you take a week away. And that is, because a lot of people, again, capacity is a real issue. And the idea is not like, some people can't do a date every single week and it's too much pressure and it's too stressed out. And now you're trying to force something as well. Yep. So I do think another solution to that for dating or married is to spend some time discovering the things that you would either both like to do together, and that might take time. That might take 5 years of discovering what is something both of you and I really enjoy.
Right.
So no one's having to compromise for the other person. And that might take a lot of time and a lot of discovering a lot of different activities. Or you can plan something. You can say, hey, let's do a marathon together, and that will make you practice. Or let's learn, I'm going to learn the guitar, you learn the harmonica, right? And we'll jam together. Like just having some sort of goal, right? That isn't just raising our kids and, making money. The goal has to be something remote from everyday life because it's hard.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So I know we're getting close to time. I have one final question for you. So if you could go back 10 years to the Jolene from 10 years ago, what advice would you give her?
Ooh, that is a really great question. You could not pay me $1 million to relive my youth. I know most people are like, oh my God, my 20s. I was a mess. I was a mess between men, right? 10 years ago, I was partying. I was drinking all the time. Drinking. I think I had stopped using drugs. I was on drugs for a long time. But at that point in my life, I was extremely lost. So I think the advice I would give myself would be to I would have to say cut people out that were toxic immediately so that I could learn from people that were healthy.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is so hard to do when you're in it. Right. And you learned a lot of lessons that have made you who you are today. So I love how you're like, I wouldn't change anything because, you wouldn't go back. Right.
Yeah, I was going to say I would change everything, but I wouldn't.
Right. But you're like, you've learned from a lot of those harsh experiences.
Yeah.
And I think that makes you a stronger person now, but I think we all have some toxic people in our past that like, man, I wish I had disengaged.
Yeah, there was this idea that, you have to be compassionate to everybody. And for a very long time, I was like, well, that's me. I'm kind. I love everybody.
Right.
And now I realize that that's not what compassion is at all.
No.
So, it's okay. And so that I wish that I would have really gotten that.
Yeah. I think as women too, sometimes we have a hard time. I mean, that whole like, oh, you need to be nice, and no, you don't have to be nice. You can kindly disengage from someone. But if you're nice all the time, you never walk away from situations and people that you should.
Right. I had someone tell me I was being unkind at one
Mm.
point not too long ago. And I had someone go, Jolene, I can't believe you would say that. And you are a date and relationship coach. And I thought it was funny because I was like, I'm human. I'm not, it is,
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
I'm not the kindest, most perfect person in the world, you know.
And that's okay. I don't know if anybody on my team would say that I'm the kindest person in the world, but I know that they would get
adventurous, fun. I get
yeah.
everything, but there's some really kind people in the world.
Yes. So, what are the best ways for people to follow you, maybe take your 21-day challenge, find your book, all those kinds
Thank
of
you.
things?
So I give a lot of advice on my Instagram at Jolene Beaton. On TikTok, it's at Dating Explained. My book is on Amazon,
Awesome.
and then the 21-day challenge. It is like if you can take a break from dating and dive in for 21 days, it will get you so ready. It will answer every question you have about dating. So I'm really proud of that work. You can find it on the App Store.
Awesome. That's
called Dating Explained.
Dating Explained on the App Store. If that's the phase in your life that you're in where you're dating, please check it out. Jolene is the master at all of this. And I'm just so excited for what you've done, the book you've written, the challenge, everything that you're doing is really, really, really cool. Thanks again for joining us, Jolene. This has been fantastic.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning into Might in Motion. If you learned something about motivation, momentum, mindfulness, or might, please like, comment, and share. Thank you.